Hello and welcome to Solving for Angles. This first question, it says, what is the measure of angle ABC? So you want to be careful. We're talking about this angle right here, and it appears as though it would almost be difficult to find. One of the things that you need to realize is the fact that if we have parallel lines, and again, we know that these lines are parallel because of this symbol, and this symbol, the lines are parallel, we're going to look for alternate interior angles. I happen to have alternate interior angles here and here, so I know that this angle is in fact 45. And I also have alternate interior angles in this case with the 75 and this being 75. Now, having said that, when it's looking for this entire angle here, I need to add those two measures together, so it would be 75 plus 45, which is equal to 120. Kind of an interesting example, but we have three parallel lines cut by two different transversals. Let's take a look at the next page, or the bottom of number that. So in this case, it's talking about the fact that we have parallel lines, and we know they're parallel again based on the fact that we have these symbols here, these lines are parallel, and then these lines are parallel. So taking a look at this in particular, we happen to know that 16x minus 8 is going to go with angle 1, and we know that angle 2 is going to be 4 times y plus 8, and the measure of angle 3 is going to be 14x plus 2. Now we also know that we talked earlier that we don't want to have too many equations with two letters, so instead we're going to use, in this case, corresponding angles. So here we have a corresponding angle right here with angle 1 is corresponding with angle 3. They're in the same relative position, so we know that those are equal. So now I'm going to write my equation that looks something like 16x minus 8 equals 14x plus 2. I could subtract 14x from both sides and get 2x minus 8 is equal to 2. Add 8 to both sides, 2x equals 10, and then I know that x is equal to 5. Now, having said that, I'm going to put x is equal to 5 into my equations for x. So 14 times 5 plus 2 gives me 72, and 16 times 5 minus 8 also gives me 72. So I know that this angle is now 72, and it's not just angle 1. Now, if you were to look at the same thing, we happen to know that angle 1 being here is also corresponding with this angle here. So we do know that this angle is in fact 72, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use our vertical angles right here with angle 2 and this angle being equal, and we're going to write an equation based on that. So in this case, I'm going to write 4 parentheses y plus 8 is equal to 72, and then I can solve it from there. 4y plus 32 equals 72, 4y equals 40, and y equals 10. Now, if y was to be equal to 10, I would do 4 times y plus 8, 4 times 10 plus 8, and it winds up to be 4 times 18, otherwise known also as 72. So all these angles are equal. Let's take a look at the next one. Now in this case, we're talking about a vocabulary word for an auxiliary line. An auxiliary line is an extra line needed to complete a proof in geometry, and it's usually parallel to a line already in the picture. So in this diagram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw what we call an auxiliary line right in the middle here. And that helps us for a couple of different reasons. First of all, in this case, I have alternate interior angles here, so I know that those would be equal. And I also have alternate interior angles here, and I know that those would be equal. So I just used that in the first example in order to solve for the angle measure. That auxiliary line was already drawn, but in this case I needed to draw it myself. So now we're going to look at this next question. It says use auxiliary lines to find the unknown labeled angles. So once again, I'm going to draw an auxiliary line parallel to the two that are already given that goes right smack in the middle of this particular angle. I happen to know that if I extended these lines, now I have a picture that has become rather familiar. I do know, since that this angle is 56, it's going to match this one here. So that also is going to be 56. Those are alternate interior angles. Now I also know that if this angle is 144, then my alternate interior over here is going to be 144. And then I'm able to get the other piece of this angle in here. So I'm going to do 180 minus 144 and get 36. So this top angle is 36. This angle right here is 36. And if I was trying to get angle 1 is going to be equal to 56 plus 36. Angle 1 is in fact equal to 92 degrees. That's a little tricky, so we're going to look at another one of those in class, but that's how you do that one. Okay, now we're going to go on to the next page. So in this case, I'm looking at number 2, and I'm trying to find angle 2. Now before I do anything, you want to draw that auxiliary line right smack in the middle so that we have alternate interior angles. I might also need to extend the given lines so that I can clearly see what's happening. Now, in this case, I happen to know that the angle across from the 35, based on the fact that we have 35 degrees here, this angle here is also going to be 35. So I'm going to fill that in green. 35. I also know that based on alternate interior angles, I could in fact get this angle to be 35. And now, if the sum of the two angles is 72, then I happen to know I'm going to call this x, which is that little angle there. X plus 35 must be equal to 72, so x is equal to 37. Again, I am taking this 72 degree angle and I'm splitting it up into two different parts. One that's 35 and the other that's 37. So now I know that this angle up in the corner is 37. And I can use the fact that we have alternate interior angles to figure out what this angle is. And now this is 37. So now I know that angle 2 is in fact also 37 degrees. Again, a little tricky using these auxiliary lines, but that's what we need to do in order to solve it. Let's take a look at the next page. In this case, we have an interesting proof that some of you have never seen before, and we're going to talk about probably for the first time. If I was to draw an auxiliary line right up on the top of this triangle that is in fact parallel to the one on the bottom, I happen to know a couple of things. That this angle is alternate interior with that one. And this angle, notice the two swooshes, is alternate interior with that one. Regardless, I happen to know that the three angles up on the top near the line, these three here, add up to 180. Now, if the single swoosh for the black angles and the double swoosh for the black angles are all equal, then I happen to know that the sum of the degrees in a triangle is always 180. So what I can write here is the sum of the angles in a triangle is always 180. Now let's take a look at the next two examples. So in this case, we happen to see that this angle is 78, and this angle next to it should in fact be supplementary because they are angles on a line. So if I was to do that, I could figure out very easily that this is in fact 102, and it's 180 minus 78, which equals 102. And then I also happen to know that the three angles in a triangle add up to 180. So in order to get this angle 1, I'm going to take 102 plus 42 to get 144. And then I'm going to do 180 minus 144 to come up with my answer of 36 degrees. In the next example, I have parallel lines cut by a transversal. So if you were to follow your parallel lines and look for the z, we happen to see that right there. And what I'm going to do is the following. If this is 94, this angle here, then I happen to know that this angle right here is in fact 86, because they are supplementary. Now if that's 86, then I happen to know that that's 86. And then I could easily get the third angle in the triangle, which is this one here. I'm going to do 86 plus 57 is equal to 143. So 180 minus 143 is equal to 37. So this angle in here is in fact 37 degrees. Lastly, to finish answering this question, I happen to know that the two angles, in this case right here, are in fact supplementary. So these two added up to 180. In order to find angle 2 is going to be equal to 180 minus 37, or 143. And that's my answer for angle 2. All right, one last slide and then we're done. Now in this case we have some interesting ones. All right, so in this case we're going to look at alternate interior angles again. And again, I'll keep pointing it out with my little arrow. If this is 46, because the lines are parallel and you see this z, we have alternate interior angles, and this angle needs to be 46. Another example that I have here that's super important is the fact that these two angles should add up to 180, so they are in fact supplementary. 180 minus 94 is equal to 86. Now I know that this angle in here is 86 degrees, and in order to get angle 4, I'm going to use the fact that the three angles in a triangle add up to 180. I'm going to do 86 plus 46 plus x, we'll call it, is equal to 180. So I wind up with 132 plus x equals 180, and x is equal to 48 in this case. So angle 4 is equal to 48 degrees. So right in here, this is 48 degrees. And then moving on to the last one. So in this case, what you first want to do is look at the fact that we have a triangle. And in this case, like we've done in class before, we know that these three angles should add up to 180. So angle 5 in this case, I'm going to do 68 plus 58 to get 126. And I'm going to do 180 minus 126 to in fact get 54. Now I know that that angle is 54. Write that a little neater. So this is 54 here. Now also, I do know that these two angles added up together are supposed to be in fact supplementary. These two here. So the angle next to the 168, I'm going to in fact do 180 minus 68. And I get 112. So this is 112. Now I also know one more thing about angles on a line is that these three angles, these three here in the green, are supposed to add up to 180. So I could do 58 plus 93 equals 151. 180 minus 151 equals 29. So now I know that this angle is 29. And lastly, in order to solve this question, I'm going to move some stuff over. We would do 112 plus 29 is equal to 141. And then to get angle 6, I'm going to do 180 minus 141, and I'm going to get 39 degrees. So angle 6 is equal to 39 degrees. That's about it. I appreciate it, and I will see you tomorrow. Just fixing this 9. Have a great day. Bye.